the previous video, we installed minikube and we installed kubectl. We ensured that kubectl is able to talk to minikube. Let's proceed forward from here. There are a couple of commands we're going to look at. The first command is kubectl get nodes. This one gives us all the information about the nodes that are participating in the cluster. As I said earlier, minikube just has one node. Name of the node is minikube, status is ready, roles is master, age is 3 hours 18 minutes, and the version is v1.18.3. Let's do next one. This is with the option -o wide. It gives us a little more information like the internal IP, external IP, OS image, kernel version, and container runtime. If you want this information, a little more information in YAML format, you could do this, and it will give you information in YAML format. Same thing you can do with JSON. So let's pipe it with less to be able to scroll up and down using the arrow key on the keyboard. So if you scroll down over here, this is metadata object, and then it has a name called minikube, and then we are interested in status.addresses.type. So if you look at this object over here, status, addresses, address, and type. Look at it closely, because the next exercise for us is to display only internal IP and the metadata name. Let's go ahead and show the metadata name first. We will use JSonPath for it. So it's kubectl get nodes -o. The output is JSonPath, and we specify the JSonPath. So whatever we just saw above, we saw there's an items array. So this is the format, square bracket star dot metadata dot name. There you go. Then we will look at the internal IP. And if you remember, under items, there was an object called status. Status had addresses, and addresses had type and address. So what we want to do is, wherever the type is internal IP, we want to return the address. There's another important thing that you need to remember here. If I completely get rid of this, when you want to query for a particular attribute under that object, the format is this: question mark and the parenthesis. And then since it's an attribute, you do at the rate dot type equals to internal IP. Let's pick this up from here. And it returns the internal IP. Now what we will do is we will look at custom columns, get nodes. You'll see it returns 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns. What I want is, I want only 2 columns. First column should be the name, and the second column should be the internal IP. So when we had done -o wide, we had the name and we had the internal IP. So I just want these 2 columns to be shown. And how do you do that? You do it using custom columns. So custom columns, single quotes, the column name, colon, the JSON path, comma, column name, colon, JSON path, so on and so forth. You could go on. Great. Number 8, kubectl get nodes field selector. Imagine for a moment you had more than one node and you wanted a rabbit node to be shown. We do not have rabbit, but let's assume we wanted rabbit node to be shown. So what we could have done is, we could have set metadata.name is rabbit. Obviously, it will say no resource found in the default namespace. But if you do minikube, you see that the whole object is returned to you. I hope it makes sense. I could have done the same thing on status. I could have done the same thing on roles, so on and so forth. Whatever fields were there in JSON, you could have queried using the JSON path. Note one thing over here though, you do not specify dot. It is assumed that you're getting an object from under items. So you wouldn't want to do this. Next we will see how to show labels on the nodes. So you see there are a couple of labels over here. If there were more than one node and they had unique labels, we could have done kubectl get node --selector equals to the key equals value. So this is the key and this is the value, and there are many labels for it. There you go. If you want to add a label, this is the way you do it. So you say kubectl label node, the name of the node, key equals to value, and here we are adding a label name equals to CloudEzee. Now if I say get nodes show label name equals to CloudEzee. Kubectl get nodes selector. So selector is the exact same thing what we saw earlier. For the label that we added, we want to return the object for it. Instead of selectors, you could use a shorthand variable called -l. It's exact same thing. Kubectl taint. So taint and toleration for node, we're going to talk about it later, but just for the sake of fact that we are looking at all the options that are available with node, let's go ahead and look at taints. So what we are doing is we are using a taint using the command kubectl taint node, name of the node, key equals to value, colon effect. So key is name, value is CloudEzee, and the effect is NoSchedule. Let's look at this. So what we're doing here is kubectl get node, name of the node, -o YAML, and we are grabbing on taint, and we are saying return everything after the found string 10 more lines. This was the one that was found. After that, 10 lines would be returned. And here you see there's a taint, effect is NoSchedule, key is name, value is CloudEzee. Awesome. Next, we will see if there are any pods on the cluster. So we do not have any pods under the default namespace. We will go ahead and try to create a pod. Notice over here we have a taint on one node, which is apparently just one in the cluster, and we have it as NoSchedule. So what will happen is when you try to create this pod, it will not get scheduled because the scheduler wouldn't find any node to schedule this on. So if we go ahead and do kubectl get pod -o wide, you see it is in pending status. Let's go ahead and delete this and see how do we schedule a pod on a node that has taint. So if a node has a taint and you want to schedule your pod on that particular node, what you need to do is you need to create a toleration for your pod. So that's exactly what we are going to do. We are going to create a command to output the manifest to create a pod in a file called nginx.yaml. Now if we do nano nginx-pod.yaml, this is the manifest that was created. Let's go ahead and add a toleration under pods specs section. So I will come all the way down and add it over here. Remember, this is YAML, so you have to be very, very careful with the indentation. Let's execute the next command, kubectl create. So kubectl create -f lets you create Kubernetes object using a file. So we had extracted a file using dry run client command. We updated that file and then we are saying create the object. And remember, this time we created an object with toleration in it. So this object or the pod should get scheduled. So even with the taint in, the pod is not getting scheduled. Let's go ahead and see what's wrong. So when we created the taint, we created with key equals to name, value equals to CloudEzee. But over here, if you see, the key is key, value is value. So let's go ahead and fix it. Instead of create, you can also try apply. And this time it should get scheduled. And you see that it's running. Awesome. We've already seen this. Let's go ahead and remove the label. We have the label over here and we want to remove this. So you say kubectl label node, the name of the node, and whatever is the name of that label, and put a minus as a suffix. So it says labeled. And you say that label has been removed. Let's go for the last one, which says remove the taint. When you remove the taint, it's important you specify the key, the value, and the effect with a minus sign at the end. What next? If you go to kubernetes.io, search for kubectl cheat sheet or use the link which is there in the description, you should be able to get to this cheat sheet. Go through this, practice the command that you can, and get a hold of it. I hope you enjoyed this, and thanks for watching.